Hello everyone, it's Brendan X, your cynical Buddha. Think of me as a black-hearted monk or an enlightened badass. You pick. This channel focuses on the 4 essential ideas that we need to understand and master to survive in a hostile world with our own flaws and limitations. I always like to go over each concept before we get into the meat of today's topic. So let me remind you, meaning, the social, emotional, and cognitive associations and interpretations we put on things and situations to create personal and shared meaning. Boy, that's a mouthful. Basically means our perceptions and interpretations that inform how we understand ourselves and the world. Next comes motivation. Once we figured out what the hell everything means, we become motivated to do something. We become motivated to develop a purpose. A purpose motivates you. Motivation keeps you on your purpose. Now that we have a purpose, because we figured out what the hell everything means, we need to pick good methods to achieve our purpose. Methods are the strategies, tactics, and tools used to fulfill a purpose. Bottom line, find out what works and do that. But we have to contend with madness. Madness is the aspect of life that is crazy, random, stupid, unfair, and sometimes cruel and nasty. Madness can be found in ourselves, in other people, or in the universe itself. Today's topic is the principle of complementary opposites that are integrated and dynamic. If you've watched previous videos, you know I've spent a lot of time talking about reality and the need to construct meaning that is most helpful. So this could cause a little cognitive friction because, well, reality should be objective and constructed meaning is subjective. Objective, subjective. Hey, those are opposites. How do you integrate things that are complete opposites? Well, the answer to that question is you do it all the time. Let me explain. So let's start with a pretty standard example. You work at a company and the company institutes a dress code. This is an objective reality, the dress code. It's published, it's explained, it has descriptions, details, yada yada. The dress code is the objective reality. Now you need to recognize that reality and construct an interpretation, meaning. Now you could construct the following meaning. The company I work for is evil, mean, and rotten. They're trying to crush my individuality. They're trying to destroy my spirit. They're being micromanaging and tyrannical. It's awful. That is a really good interpretation to help you have a great work experience and to rise up the company ladder. You do that. You be bitter and resentful. That's a great interpretation. That was sarcasm. So you could try a different interpretation. You could say to yourself, well, my company's, in a tough competitive environment and they're just looking for an edge. They want to survive. They want to thrive. And they think maybe the dress code will make us more professional. Maybe it'll improve productivity. Maybe it will impress our customers. And if the dress code works, it's a win for everybody. Besides, even though I'm wearing standard clothing, I can still express my individuality through accessories or my delightful personality. This could be a good thing. So you think about it and you grudgingly admit to yourself, yes, the second interpretation is best. Even though my gut wants me to pick the first interpretation, that they're just assholes, the second interpretation is best for me going forward. But how do you know that the second interpretation is true? How do I know that there really are good reasons for the dress code? How do I know that my employer is not being controlling and micromanaging, not an asshole? How do I know my interpretation is right? The answer is, it doesn't matter if it's correct or right or true. You just act as though it is. You found the interpretation that you agree works best for you, and you follow that interpretation. You just go with it. But then you're like, hey, what the hell? You want me to guide my actions by something that might not be true? On one hand, you tell me I need to follow objective reality, but on the other hand, you're telling me to guide my decision making, my future, based on a subjective interpretation? Which is it? Which world do I live in? Do I live in the world of objective facts where it matters what's correct and not correct? Or do I live in a world of subjective, constructed meaning where I get to choose the meaning that works best? Which one? The answer is both. Again, both. Now, I know some of you might be a little skeptical, but let's remember essential truth number 3. Essential truth number 3. As individuals, if we accept that reality exists and that human nature is flawed, we must seek truth with a humble and open mind. A humble mind relies on proven insights, principles, and processes to seek the truth. A humble mind relies on proven insights, principles, and processes to seek the truth. So, with your humble and open mind, I would like you to give fair consideration to the principle of complementary opposites that are integrated and dynamic. But let's dig into this concept a little bit. Let's kind of ease our way into it. I'm going to start with more concrete examples and then work our way a little bit more to the abstract. So, concrete example. The expression, the analogy, it's just two sides of the same coin. Coins famously have two sides. We call them a heads and a tails. Yeah, they do have an edge, but we're not really talking about that right now. So, the heads and the tails could be very different in appearance, completely different designs, etching, texture, whatever, and they are on opposite sides of the coin. They are positionally opposite. So they're different and they're opposite. So what is a coin? Is a coin heads or is a coin tail? It's both. Those two parts are different and seem oppositional, but they're part of the same whole. They're simultaneously different and part of the same. So we often use that expression for things that seem different, but actually are closely related. So let me give you an example where the expression two sides of the same coin would come in. And because I'm a dork who studies political science and history, I'm going to use a political example. Okay? Communism and fascism. Fascism, communism. They seem different, and in many ways they are, but they're really the same. They're two sides of the same coin. Now, fascism is where the state and the private sector, corporations, they join together to control and micromanage the society. The state could be the dominant partner, the corporations could be the dominant partner. But either way, the fundamental aspect of fascism is that the state and the corporations join together to control society. Sort of like now, you know, how our government and big tech and the media are all in bed and working together and controlling us. Shit, that was supposed to be the quiet part I kept in here. Oh well, it's out now. So, communism is different because in communism, the state takes over the whole operation. It knocks down the private sector. The The state in communism controls the means of production and all important property. So they seem different, but they're both tyrannies. They both result in oppression. So if somebody has their foot on your neck, does it really matter if that foot is in a work boot, communism, or in a dress shoe, fascism? Either way, you've got a foot on your neck. Two sides of the same coin. So the analogy, two sides to the same coin, it's a good introduction to what I'm trying to get at, but a coin is a simple object, and I'm talking more about processes, cycles. So let's go to something that's still pretty concrete and familiar, but gets into that better. Respiration. You inhale, you exhale. You inhale, you exhale. Those are opposite actions. Inhale, drawing breath in. Exhale, pushing breath out. They are opposite actions, but they are complementary parts of the same system, respiration. And you have to do both or the whole thing falls apart. If you can only inhale, your lungs fill up with depleted oxygen, but they're still full of carbon dioxide because you can only inhale. So you can't bring in more air. You die. Yeah, it's bad. On the other hand, if all you can do is exhale, you die again because now you got empty lungs. Okay? You need both to respirate. And I love respirating. Yeah, I love that because it keeps me alive. So again, that's a biological example. They're opposites, but they're complementary opposites. They're part of the same process. But now, let's get a little bit more abstract, a little more deep, a little bit more profound. I've given you those two kind of mundane examples to, give you a firm grip on the concept. Now, let me give you the full principle with a definition as part and examples, some more. Ready? Here we go. The principle of complementary opposites, integrated and dynamic, is when ideas, actions, or forces seem in opposition, but are complementary aspects of a balanced system or relationship. Examples: male and female, inhaling and exhaling, life and death, darkness and light, action and stillness, fear and courage, destruction and creation. So hopefully you can see that this principle can apply to more concrete things like respiration, or more abstract things, more conceptual things like fear and courage. Fear and courage seem to be opposites, but you can't have courage without fear. You can't be brave if you're not afraid. Bravery is overcoming fear. Courage needs fear. So it's kind of a yin-yang thing, where one thing creates or defines its opposite. Without darkness, there's no need for light. They perform the essential role of contrasting each other. If you light a candle in broad daylight, it doesn't mean a damn thing. If you light a candle when it's pitch dark, it means everything. So I went through that whole giant process to get back to where we started. The apparent contradiction between reality and subjective constructed meaning. Reality and meaning are complementary opposites. that are integrated and dynamic. In the last video, which I hope you watched, because I put my heart and soul into it, in my last video, I used analogy of mind and body. Your body is reality. It's an object. It's solid. It anchors you to the world. Your mind is capable of all sorts of great insights and abstract thinking and imaginative thoughts. If you have a body with no mind, it's like reality without meaning. I might as well just be an eggplant. On the other hand, I need a body for my mind to be anchored to. I need to be anchored to reality. Reality is the basis for developing meaning. So imagine this gorgeous lake in the mountains. It's beautiful, but it's only beautiful because we have constructed that meaning. That lake can exist for 1,000,000 years, but it doesn't mean anything until somebody can perceive it and attach the meaning beauty to it. The reality is there, but the meaning requires interpretation and perception. Reality is the basis for forming meaning. Without meaning, reality is meaningless. Again, without meaning, reality is meaningless. But meaning that is divorced from reality is madness. Don't forget madness. Madness is something we all have to beware of and deal with. But anyway, reality creates meaning, and meaning creates reality. That's right. Meaning creates reality. Wait a second. How can the subjective create the objective? That's a good question. And here is hopefully a good answer. When you construct meaning, it does not just affect your thinking and your emotions. It affects your actions, your decisions, your responses. So the meaning you construct is expressed in actions which now become part of objective reality. Let's go back to the dress code. The dress code, as we said, was the objective reality. Then you construct a meaning whereby you're angry and resentful, bitter. These assholes making me wear this robotic uniform. And as a result of your subjective interpretation, you make a lot of messes at work, you yell at people, you tell your boss off, you get written up, and you get fired. Well, your subjective interpretation of the dress code was translated into actions, and your actions are now part of a reality where your ass is unemployed. The constructed meaning created a new reality, new objective reality. And that new reality was not created by the dress code, it was created by your response to the dress code. Reality created meaning, meaning created a new reality. Round and round we go. On the other hand, suppose you went with plan B. You start with the same beginning point, the objective reality of the dress code, but instead you choose a positive interpretation. Yeah, baby, this is for winning. This is going to make us more successful. I'm all in. And that positive attitude is expressed in actions where you're supportive, helpful, productive, making the best of things. That creates a reality where you get to keep your job. You get to keep getting paid. Okay? It might even lead to a reality where you get promoted, because some other nitwit couldn't let go of their bitterness and quit. Wow. Entirely different realities based on your selected, constructed meanings. Again, this might be beating a dead horse, but the change in reality didn't come from the starting point. The dress code is not why you got promoted or got fired. Your interpretation, your constructed meaning of the dress code is what created your new situation, good or bad. So where is the line between the objective and the subjective where I have license to start picking my own interpretation of what things mean? It's not really that complicated. The objective reality was the dress code. Your employer's motivation is subjective. Their motivation is subjective, and your interpretation of their motivation is subjective. So that's like 2 layers of subjectivity. You're in the subjective realm at that point. Just go with it, because motivations are inherently subjective. See, that's where we often get twisted up, is because we're not responding to the situation that comes from other people. We're responding to our interpretation of their motives. Well, they're not even sure of their true motives. Your employer could have mixed motives, conflicting motives. Maybe it's just out of intuition or emotion, or maybe outside pressure. Just go with the best subjective interpretation. So it shouldn't be that hard to separate the reality part you have to stay consistent with, and the subjective part, motivations, emotions, feelings, where you have room to create what's best for you. So this process has 2 parts. It's a 2-part test. Part 1 is to perceive and, as much as possible, correctly interpret the reality. Part 2 is to construct a meaning that aligns with that reality, is in harmony with that reality, but is also the most helpful interpretation for you. 2-part test. Now, if you screw up part 1 and misconstrue reality, the odds that you're going to construct a good meaning for yourself are way low. On the other hand, you could perfectly comprehend the reality, but still choose a counterproductive, foolish interpretation. Like the guy who had a job he really needed and got fired because he couldn't get over the dress code. The reality was correctly interpreted, but the meaning was not well constructed. 2-part test. You need to pass both for maximum success. Okay, now let me give you a real world kind of historical example that's kind of interesting, at least to me. All right. Coke and Pepsi have been fighting the cola wars for decades, possibly more than a century. And they go back and forth, back and forth. Coke has managed to stay in front, but it's a constant battle. In the 1970s, Pepsi came up with this terrific advertising campaign called the Pepsi Challenge. And what they would do is they would film people taking a blind taste test. I'd have a sip of A and a sip of B. Which one did I like best? I liked B best. What's that? Pepsi? Oh my God, and I'm a Coke drinker. I can't believe that.
Pick Pepsi. Time after time after time.
In the Pepsi Taste Challenge, a lot of Coke drinkers were picking Pepsi, and that looked really good in a Pepsi commercial. So Coke did the same test behind closed doors to see if that was true. And it was true. In a sip taste test, say that 3 times fast, even Coke drinkers preferred Pepsi. Coke was freaking out. Oh my God, the sky is falling. We're going to be bankrupt. We're going to lose. So they spent millions and millions of dollars to change the recipe to Coke, which had been unchanged for about 3/4 of a century. And they came out with New Coke. and they hyped it, they marketed it, they shipped it, they did this great replacement, they sent it out to the stores, and Coke customers hated it. It was a disaster. It was a debacle. I like that word. Debacle. Okay? And the Coke executives were like, what the hell? It was a disaster. They had to completely backtrack, surrender, and scrap new Coke and put out classic Coke. They had to restore that. To save face, they did produce new Coke and old Coke, but it didn't matter. It was the old Coke. That was what mattered. And so the people at Coke looked like complete idiots. But they thought they were responding well to the reality of the situation. In the taste test, Coke drinkers did prefer Pepsi. What's going on here? Well, I will tell you what went on there. The taste test was real, it was legit, but it did not match the reality of how people consume soda. Okay? You don't take a bottle of soda out, take one sip, and put it back. You have servings, and the servings tend to be 8 ounces to 20 ounces. All right? Sips favor sweetness. Pepsi has kind of a sweeter, citrusy taste. Coke has more of a dry, a little bit bitter, kind of vanilla-y taste. If you're just taking a sip, yeah, even a Coke drinker is going to prefer Pepsi. But if you go beyond that sip and you drink 12 ounces of it, after a while that sweetness, it's not good anymore if you're a Coke drinker. Because you're not consuming a serving of a sip. You're consuming 8 ounces, 12 ounces, 16 ounces, 20 ounces. So the reality of how people actually drink soda was completely different than the taste test. Coke misconstrued reality. They embraced a false reality, a trick that Pepsi had come up with. So the meaning was out of sync with the actual reality. And that's why the result was madness. You had a company with a successful product with 60% of the market share that had been dominating for decades, that was winning a race, panic and shoot itself in the foot. And everybody was like, this is crazy. They're going to be talking about this for 100 years. And they will, because Coke did not get the reality part right. So the meaning part was going to be screwed up too. So their actions were going to be counterproductive, disastrous, a debacle, madness. So we cannot exist in the world without constructing meaning, which helps us take actions, which hopefully work out for the best. We have to construct meaning, but we have to be very conscientious in how we do so, because we don't want to misconstrue reality or construct meaning that is divorced from it, which creates madness. The meaning drives our motivation and methods. If we screw up the meaning, our motivation is going to be messed up, our methods are going to be faulty. Okay, this was good for me. I hope it was good for you. This is Brendan X, your cynical Buddha, signing off. Peace out.